Thank you everybody for joining from wherever you are. We have an exciting kind of schedule of talks, all relating to designing for Japan. And we're going to provide a bunch of different perspectives from our team. I guess a quick intro, as some of you may not know me, I'm John Hayato Branderhorst, that says right there. And I basically help out with sales and marketing with the B-Trax team. Been doing it for a while now. Feel free to connect with me there, LinkedIn. That's my social network of choice. And so, yeah, without further ado, I'll kind of kick off a little bit. Today, we'll be giving a variety of perspectives. Some of the content you may see tonight is also, or this morning, is available either on our ebooks, that's on our btrax.com site, or our blog site. So if you read Japanese, we have something for you. If you read English, we have something for you. So the B-Trax blog is really covers multiple avenues. So I'm going to kick it off a little bit with a warm-up. I do see a lot of Japanese people here, so if you all get this wrong, that's okay. But if you get it right, that's okay too. So just to prepare you, you may want to have your phone ready. This is going to be an interactive warm-up this morning, evening, afternoon. I'm going to cover all the bases. And so we're going to ask some questions to warm things up. Is everybody ready? All right. I see some head nodding. Here we go. Let me make sure that this is working. All right. So you can join at slido.com. So you can do this. You can do this on your laptop, desktop, but your phone, if you point your phone camera at that QR code, you'll be able to answer this question. So let's see. In Japan, there are more children than pets. At least one person answered, I see. And they said no. All right. Oh, we got somebody who said true. Oh, it's going. Ooh, it's all right. 1/4 say true, 3/4 say false. It's going a little bit more. Let me see. We have about 22 that voted. Sorry, that's all right. Well, the answer is false. But I really wanted to start out with this one because I'll be honest, this is kind of like, in some ways, this is clickbait in terms of like market research, right? So it's I was kind of like doing some research on this, like what are fun facts about Japan? And yes, it's true that there are more pets than children, but that's the case, honestly, in most countries, if you think about it. And so like when you look up, if you Google fun facts about Japan, one of the top ones may be about this. And what you're going to realize is you keep digging a little deeper, which we hope you do when you find these kinds of facts, you'll realize that, oh, well, yes, but it's not really that unique to Japan. When you think about how many people own dogs, how many people own cats, how many people own other kinds of pets, right? The idea of pets can range from a lot. That being said, there are more than 20 million pets in Japan. There's probably about 17 million, the last I checked, of children under the age of 16. So something to think about when you guys, this is one of those things where I'm like, do your research, guys, and don't just take that first piece of information that's interesting. All right, next. What country introduced salmon sushi to the Japanese in the 80s? What country? Portugal. All right, Portugal, Norway, Canada, United States. We have somebody. We have a clear winner at this point, and that's 13 people that voted. Oh, USA. Oh, China. All right. Well, the answer is, as you probably, hopefully, I don't know how many people voted for Norway, but Norway is the answer. Norway introduced, it was back in the time when Norway kind of learned how to do pen fishing, so net pens for salmon fishing. And it was a hard sell for the Japanese because Japanese did not eat salmon sushi at the time due to parasite issues. And so what I love about when I do research about sushi, honestly, is Japan is known for sushi, but then you look into like the salmon background in Japan. And, it's just from the 80s. Even if you look at tuna, I think tuna is actually probably the case study that's more popular usually, because back in the day, it wasn't a high-end fish, right? And so these are really interesting how they associated with Japan, but some of these ideas of these different types of sushi came from somewhere else. All right, we have one more, and then we're going to kick it off with the reason you all are here. But this is my fun warm up. What is the most expensive city in Japan to live? All right. Wow. So everybody thinks Tokyo. Well, this is actually another fun and interesting one because Tokyo is the one that I thought of. But when you start looking at different ways to look at it, Osaka was actually listed in this most recent kind of study. It was a little bit. I think it was pre-COVID though. But Osaka has been trending higher, and Tokyo did not even actually make the top 10. Osaka was number 5 in this, and I'll share the link to it. It really does depend though how you measure it, right? Like this is the fun thing, right? Like that I like to talk about in market research. How are you measuring expensive city, right? Like are we talking about rent? Are we talking about going out entertainment, overall cost of living? So it was funny to me to see that Osaka was tied with Tel Aviv as the most expensive city in Japan, being Osaka, and number 5. I was looking up, just quickly currently, and I don't know, and you never know some of these things with some of these Japanese cities may not pop up and with the yen rate and whatnot. But thank you everybody for joining me on this fun warm up. I hope this loosened you guys up to kind of check out and listen to our next conversation. So we have 4 topics coming up. We have Brandon Hill kicking it off with how design teams are structured in Japan. And then we have our resident San Francisco non-Japanese designers, Jonathan and Jared, talking about how U.S. designers experience working with Japanese clients. And then we're going to do a little bit higher overview from a Japanese perspective with our marketers, Aoi and Ayaka-san, talking about design trends from a Japanese marketer's view. And then Mari will be kind of giving more of a design trends through the eyes of a UI UX designer. Each talk will be about 10 to 15 minutes. Please hold your questions till the end. You can put them in the chat. I will be keeping track. And then we'll have a little bit of Q&A at the end. So I hope everybody's ready. Brandon, are you ready, sir?
I hope so. This is everything's so new to me. This is hybrid, so I don't even know if you guys see me okay here.
I just spotlighted you, sir, and I'm unspotlighting myself.
Okay. All right. Cool. So good. All right. So as we have a few speakers, I'd like to make this 10 to 15 minutes, as John says, and obviously, introducing myself. My name is Brandon Hill. I am the founder and CEO of B-Tracks, the organizer of this event, as well as the design agency in San Francisco and Tokyo. And I'm calling in from San Francisco today, our headquarters. This is my gene breakdown, just to show who I am. I think this is the best way to introduce myself. Half Japanese, half American, Caucasian. The mother's side on the left side, my daddy's side on the right side. Anyway, so this is where I am. It's clear, all right? So I'd like to kick off by asking questions, obviously, on Slido. Where are you joining from? Location. Since this is a hybrid, I'd like to know where you are located. Tokyo, cool. Tokyo with Emoji, Tokyo, San Francisco, LA, little Tokyo in LA. There we go, San Francisco. A lot of people are in San Francisco. There we go. Sonoma, Denver, Tokyo. Cool. Oh, this is exciting. Really exciting to see a lot of people from a lot of different places. It's such a new thing for us and for us, everybody, joining different places. Kamakura. Cool. Thank you very much. So Tokyo and San Francisco, more people in those two cities. Those cities happen to be our locations. So let's go. All right, next, what is your job? Designer, developer, marketer, manager, business executive, student, sales. There are more answers there. There we go. There are designers. Something else. Something else is second. I couldn't guess what it is. All right. I'd like to understand who I'm talking to today, just to make sure. Something else. This will be really tough job for me. Okay, so I'm talking to something else people today, mostly. Cool, all right. Thank you. That's good to know. Different kinds of occupations nowadays, I guess. Alrighty, so a little bit about B-Tracks. We put our vision as we design the future by bridging the gaps. Means we are a design company and we design for future products and services by bridging the gaps between the US and Japan, different cultures, startups and corporations, different ways of thinking, different customers. That's who we are. And some of our clients, we have 300 plus clients, but some of those. Obviously, our clients mostly are in Japan, the US. Japanese corporations and US tech startups, tech companies going to the Japanese market. So we're going to talk about these Japanese market trend and design trends today. So my topic is how designers are structured differently in the US. I'd like to talk about how design has evolved. So I would say 20 years ago, design is something like client gives you something and you do something for them. It's straightforward, easy to understand. However, last 5-10 years, it got shifted to solving clients' problems. Could be design, could be business, could be tech, anything related to issues and challenges. So designers come in and think about the root cause of the challenges and who are the customers, and then we come up with strategies. That's how design got evolved. And there's something called design thinking. That's based on the right side of design works. But I would still feel like Japan still stays within the left side before timeline, while US has evolved greatly for solving problems when it comes to designers' responsibilities. And the business process, it's a bit different in Japan and the US. As far as I understand, US companies, mostly I would say tech companies and startups, we start the business service development by discovering user needs and wants first. And then we think about the user experience. So we design UX, that's the user experience. And then we develop brand strategies. Then eventually we nurture fans and turn them into customers. So I would say this is the digital age, modern way of developing businesses. But in Japan, still, it's still, I would say, old school. We do product planning, and we move on to develop core technologies. And then we spend time to create a product. And we spend a lot of time creating products, by the way, because we need to make it perfect. And then, obviously, we do a lot of sales. We need to find people who would buy your products. Because until you start doing the sales activities, we do not know who we are selling to. So the last part is really, really crucial to find customers. Very different, very different. So we design things differently, or we try to adopt US ways of doing business for the Japanese companies, Japanese clients. And also when it comes to relationships between our clients and design companies, it's slightly different. I'd like to show these. The starting point is the same. US and Japan, they're clients. However, in the US, there's design company, and then there are freelancers. Japan's case, there's ad agency and design company, and there's subcontractors. So more layers. And there is a big difference here, obviously, is ad agency. So there are very few big agencies in Japan who will get the projects from end clients. And those ad agencies come up with strategies, and they hire designers, and design companies hire subcontractors to outsource some of their works. So US side is more integrated, less layers, while the Japan side has more layers and more people involved in, but sometimes this gets really complicated. And lastly, I identify there are two distinctively different types of designers in Japan, or design jobs, rather. So the type one, the first layer is I would call landowners, creative directors, people looking like these. Some pattern going on here. Black framed glasses. They look like these. They are the brains of the project. So they think, they come up with ideas, they set the directions. That's why they're called directors. They set the creative directions, creative directors. They make a lot of money. They set the directions of the project. And then they'll talk to the production designers, like these. I don't know who they are, but there are tons of designers in Japan. Their job is to produce what the creative directors tell them. So that obviously they typically do not think too much about the directions. And this is why their struggles start. Because even though they're designers, they're expected to produce something like illustration, UI design, pixel perfect graphics. Creative directors are the ones who set the directions. However, there are only a few creative directors in Japan who achieve that level of position. So different structure. This could be partly due to this ad agency culture in Japan, and we're trying to break this pattern to better serve our clients. Don't worry, we do work for ad agencies as well, and we're currently working for a couple agencies, by the way. They're nice people. All right, that's all. And if you have any questions, if you want to learn more about us, there's btrucks.com, ebook pages, Fresh Trucks blog articles and newsletter, email newsletter sign up, everything's here. So if you want to learn more about us, please go to btrucks.com. Thank you very much. Right.
All right, next, I believe it's going to be Jonathan and Jared. Please come up there. And Brandon, Jonathan, and Jared are all in the B-Tracks office. As you can see, we have multiple cameras. And so this has been a fun test for us to make sure we do this right. And so, all right, Jonathan and Jared, please introduce yourselves in Japanese. No, I'm kidding. Feel free to kick off your talk.
So, hey everybody. Today we're basically going to cover a topic that's going to be about our experiences working with Japanese clients. We're currently US designers working in San Francisco. But let me introduce myself. I'm Jonathan. I am the lead UI UX designer here at B-Tracks. I've been working here for around 3, almost 4 years now. and I'm currently working remotely in Seattle. So there's definitely different experiences that I might have compared to Jared here. So Jared, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi everybody. My name is Jared Javier, and I'm an associate UI UX designer here at Beatrax. Been here for a little more than a year, and yeah, based here in San Francisco. But yeah, just like JC was saying, or Jonathan was saying, is I do have previous experience that is much different from the experience that I have here. But we will go more in depth about that as we talk. Yeah.
So obviously, the thing that we want to make sure that everyone understands is that a lot of what we design is always from a Western perspective, because we grew up here, we definitely had our education here. So there's a lot of understanding that is completely different from if someone were to grow up in the eastern part of the world. So we want to just make sure that that's out there and it's clear that everything that we see and design comes from that perspective. So some of the things that we've seen around us obviously are like the advertisements or any sort of design that we understand the information from. This will usually help us to understand a Western audience. So these are some examples that we like to show. Here are other ones like Uber, Stranger Things. A lot of the perspectives that we learn nowadays is that imagery is really big. Right, text minimal, right? So it makes the message clear to a user on how to read this text and understand this ad. Same thing here. We also type with platforms like Twitter that reduces the amount of text. So a lot of it becomes very minimal a lot of the time. And the advertisements are just basically sprinkling in branding and having a lot of this big imagery. So those are some examples that come to mind when we talk about our perspectives.
And so, and so going into Workstyle, one of the biggest things for us that we've noticed that's different from working with Japanese and US clients is Workstyle. And so there are, let's see, to start off. So agency versus production. A little bit of my background is the job previous for me was a company that sold stationary products. And so it was more of a production role. And so my experience, it wasn't very client facing. And the end result was the product. And so the product was already made. There were a lot of things that were already, the product is just done and completed. Whereas working in an agency and working towards client projects, there's more collaboration and more focus on these projects.
Right.
Yeah.
And then for Jared, I was just wondering, like, how different is it for you to transition from a production role into understanding a different culture?
Yeah, it's much different because my previous job, it was it was working with the culture wasn't too different, right? It's a U.S. Company, based in California, and so I'm used to that. But coming to a Japanese design agency, it was very different, and definitely needed to learn a lot along the way, and still learning.
Yeah. And that comes down to us now then trying to understand the expectations of the design, right, from Japanese clients, right? The amount of quality that they expect out of it is completely on a different level, right? And the process that brings about how to design these products or services now become interesting for us. Right? We're mixed in a pot now where we kind of understand that clients usually have a little bit more of an opinion when we're meeting up with them, especially for a US client. And they will tell us their feedback right away and we can work on it. And so the interactions with Japanese clients, on the other hand, now become on the opposite hand of it. So Japanese clients tend to like to take their time a little bit more, right? Digest what you give them and understand every single reason why you designed it the way that you have, right? Because most of the time they have a hierarchy in their company that they're trying to pitch the ideas or services to. So having the reasons behind every single portion that you design is now the challenge that we have to convince them before they can even convince themselves. And so, yeah, the constructive portion makes it easier for us to have to convince them, because when we design, US designers tend to want to use reason to make sure that the design is seamless, right? But you're pitching to people that don't understand the design necessarily, right? They come from a background maybe of business and marketing. And so we try to strive and work with them, negotiate with them a little bit on how to convince themselves on that. And so the last point here we want to point out is that the Japanese clientele tend to want harmony. And what that means usually is that when you pitch an idea, some may agree, some may disagree. And so when you pitch the idea and everyone's not satisfied, that breaks the harmony. And so to bring harmony is to let them decide internally. So you hand them the project, they take a look at it, they come back to you with feedback, or they just, you can move forward. So you can imagine that the process actually may take a while. It can even be pushed back quite a bit in terms of how long you will design that part for. So, yeah. And so this is an example of some of the work that we've done. We just took a screenshot of the Figma files that we've done with the Japanese clientele. And as you can see on the top left here, that was usually just, you're storyboarding with them. So they're trying to understand the concept of the function that you're trying to make for them, the experience. And so you design the flow and you give it to them. And once they receive it, they may have feedback saying, okay, can you try doing it this way, right? And it may seem like a lot of the clientele do this anyways, right? But with the Japanese specifically, we found that they tend to want to perfect the experience, right? They want to send out something that means quality. And so that means a lot of different iterations. So as you keep going down further into the left side right here, you can see how many different drafts that we had to make for maybe a couple screens, right? But that in the end impacts the overall experience for them. And then once they agree upon that experience, then you can see on the bottom that they streamlined it from then on. So yeah, a lot of trial and error that we've been having to do.
Yeah. And as you can see on the right side, it's a little cut off on the right, but there are, we were working with a client, a Japanese client that was entering the US market. And so we had to make an app and web page or landing page for them. But each concept was different because we were working with them to create a product or, for a landing page. And so each concept was different, but the way they went about it was they wanted to see kind of the best screen possible, just to see if we could even bring the landing pages to look a certain way. So it was a little bit more look and feel. And as we kind of honed in on the design that they wanted, they kind of wanted a little bit of different things from each page. And that's what kind of led us to the last page on the right. So it's a much different process than the one on the left.
You're basically having to pitch to them so they can pitch to their higher ups on how the design actually works. So if it doesn't work out, then it tends to become like a lot of iterations. Yeah. So 3 concepts that we made here, and each one had its own experience to it, and then funneling it into the last one on the right. Yeah. So yeah, overall, basically, from our perspective, we learned a lot that cultural context affects the design. If you don't understand the context of the crowd or the context of how they may use the app or website, then that changes a lot for us. So we recently attended a conference from Figma, Config, and we saw this screen and it really resonated with us. So we also wanted to share with you that the products don't need to look the same everywhere, they just need to work everywhere. If the look and feel is the same and you're designing the same thing for both crowds, then it might not work at all. So that's something that we want to share and take away, have you guys take away. Yeah, so to reemphasize, context is everything.
Yeah, and that can vary from typography, the way information is organized, as well as, sorry about that. But yeah, so yeah, context is everything.
Right. The color like psychology is very different within the two crowds. So red, for example, for us, a lot of the time in UI, right, red may mean either an accent color or an error or just a sign of emphasis. But in a lot of Japanese design, that may mean something that it attracts somebody, right? It's a positive thing rather than a negative. So it's really interesting to see how a lot of brands that when we try to do our research, it kind of conflicts with our own understanding of all this context. So, yeah. So we want to share a little bit about a holistic and analytical design approach. I written an article about this on Fresh Tracks, but what it basically was trying to talk about was basically that holistic is that the Japanese people don't want too much graphics, too much in the way of the text. So they would have to understand the whole entire page and they take that information and they make a decision on it. So it takes the whole entire experience and can impact their own decisions. While the analytical on the US side, we tend to group information up. So we can take pieces of information and understand it and make a decision as quickly as just like that, right? So that's something that we have to usually consider when working with Japanese clientele. They need everything to make sense, or else none of it makes sense, right? So yeah, that's something that we wanted to share.
Some of these are examples of Macari, and so they use hyperlocalization with these logos, with their branding, but their logos are much different. And so the one on the right is a web page from in Japan, and then the one on the left is from the US. And so as you can see, like the colors are different, the way the information is organized is much different. Yeah, and then so this next one right here, Yahoo Japan, their logo is red, the one in the US is purple, and then also the way they structure the information on the page is much different from each other as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Rakuten as well. And this one is mainly color, whereas the Rakuten on the left is purple, the one in Japan is red. But yeah, even the logos as well. So, so yeah, the context in this is that the typography, the color, they vary, depending on its region.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously, since we're from the Western perspective, we make a lot of mistakes when designing for Japanese clientele, right? We had a lot of experiences where we would just design the same thing for both crowds, but just change up the text, right? Like, so from English to Japanese, and then it would work, right? But no, right? It doesn't work at all. They say, well, this font is too big. This font is like 96 type, right? And for us, it's fine because it's bold. For them, it's almost obnoxious. So we want to make sure that we make those mistakes early on, so that way we can fix those. But one thing that we also kind of have run into was that too much information or too little information mean different things. So, Jared, how would you like to
yeah, and so this is from Sony as well. And so as you see on the left, the Japan version, there's a lot more text, a lot more information going on. But for us in the US, that's like might be considered too much. And you can see that in the US side, very limited information. The imagery is more focused on the product itself rather than the text. Whereas on the left, the text is much bigger, or there's just a lot more text involved.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, one takeaway that we want to share case with everybody is that like how would you work with Japanese clientele then if you don't understand the nuances of Japanese design? Well, simply put, we work with a Japanese design team. They help us to understand that our designs may or may not work. And later on, we also have marketers and a UI UX designer that will speak, that will showcase more of the trends. So that's also how we keep up to date on how to design correctly or design well for Japanese clientele. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.